We are now opening the public hearing for County Ditch 86A, the final acceptance of the Lemeti contract. Ms. Coppett, would you like to continue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just a little recap on where we came from to get to today. On November 13th, 2018, the Drainage Authority accepted the final engineer's report and the viewer's reports for the 86A improvement project. Upon advertised bids, the Drainage Authority awarded a contract for construction to Lemeti and Sons Incorporated. ISG, the engineer, has submitted their final acceptance report pertaining to Lemeti and Sons Incorporated contract. The purpose of today's hearing is for the Drainage Authority to consider accepting the engineer's report to close the contract with Lemeti and Sons Incorporated only. Notice for the public hearing today was given by mail to all landowners. That was mailed on February 6, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Coppett. We will now move to Roger Justin from Rinke Noonan, offering background on mediation and the status of the improvement project before we hear from Mr. Brandel at ISG. Mr. Justin?
Thank you very much. As background, I want to...
Could you go?
Is that better? Yeah. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the background of the Lemeti contract and what we're talking about today. And today, we are not talking about the entire project. We are talking about finalizing the payments to Lemeti and agreements relating to that payment. Issues or difficulties with Lemeti started early last spring. And they arose from a number of things, but one of them related to supply chain issues in relation to getting their electrical components for the project. The project was going to be delayed. There was some initial delay, and now it was looking even further. But since that time, there's kind of been a running battle between Lemeti and the county about what was owed and for additional work that Lemeti felt they had accomplished or were forced to do as a part of the contract. We had actually gone to mediation last winter to try to resolve those issues, and the county's position was no. Those are not proper claims. We'll allow you to continue with those claims, but get the project done. We'll fight about it later. And Lemeti, in their opinion, did complete the project throughout last summer and fall, and had at that point made a request for final payment, plus payment of additional monies that they thought they were owed pursuant to the terms of the contract. And they were allowed to make claims for extra work if they had done extra work on the project. We did not agree, the county did not agree that all those were appropriate, and we went to mediation. And at mediation, they made several claims. First of all, there was $199,000, and I'm rounding, I'm not going to the actual dollar, but $199,000 remained on contract work that was performed and that they hadn't been paid for. They were asking for an additional $454,000 for additional work. That additional work and costs included delay in getting the award after the bidding process, additional electrical work which was necessitated because the KSB pumps did not fit into the existing system, increased pumping costs, that they had to import more common borrow than was anticipated, that the trash grate on the system had to be bigger than was designed, so that cost more money, that there was some out-of-sequence work that was not their fault, that cost them additional monies, that a pipe dimension had been incorrectly labeled on one of the designs, and therefore they had bought the wrong size pipe and had to return it and incurred additional damages of almost $75,000 for that. That the pipe grade had to be modified because of infield changes, and they were required to replace the service door on the electrical building. So, in addition to what we agreed was due under the contract, they were saying, and plus that you owe us $454,000. We said all of those were not appropriate, and besides that, the overflow pipe had settled approximately a foot, and that's going to have to be fixed. That there were defects in construction of the prefab electrical building, and those are going to need to be fixed. That there was a temporary dike which had been created downstream of the project and it had not been fully removed, and we're going to have costs for those, and that you didn't complete the project on time. So we said anything that's owed you should be offset by those. The upshot was that at mediation, we went around and around and came back. The mediator, actually, after the mediation, a couple days, said, all right, county, I think you should pay them $230,000. You should think about paying them $230,000 and releasing them from any further obligations to perform work on the project, so you don't have to fix anything else, like the prefab building, like removing that temporary dike. And they don't have to come back anymore. Their warranties remain in place, but you pay them $230,000, which is essentially, okay, you're paying them the contract price plus $30,000 out of the $454,000 they're claiming. Came back to the board. The board approved that amount for the mediation settlement. So we're at the stage where we have agreed that they're going to be entitled to pay $230,000, that they're not going to fix those three things we identified, that they are going to be responsible excuse me, for warranty work if it's needed on the things that we accepted. And we're here today with the recommendation that we pay that $230,000 as we agreed. So that would be the recommendation when we're talking about closing out the contract, how we got to that $230,000 that is owing.
Thank you, Mr. Justin. Now I'd like to introduce Chuck Brandel from ISG for a final acceptance report. Mr. Brandel.
Good morning. Mr. Justin did a nice job of summarizing our report, so I'm going to be fairly brief. Just a few things to add to it. Typically, on a project, a drainage project, we have a closeout hearing and the contractor's paid a final amount for closing out the entire project. We're only accepting the Lametti contract because there was mediation. Typically, I'd have a larger report that would include damages and other information, but because we're just dealing with that part of it, we know that there's still some things that need to be done for the project to be complete as was approved. And then there was also another contract that was part of the improvement for some tile work, and we don't have final pay information from that contract either. So it's a couple reasons to leave the contract open. Like Mr. Justin said, there still are issues with the 36-inch overflow pipe. There were defects in the prefab building. There's still material downstream and other items that he addressed that were part of the mediation settlement agreement. So we are recommending, based on that information, the payment of $230,000 to Lametti to accept their contract. A few notes. There has not been a startup of the pumps. There was, in the contract, there was a stipulation that the warranty on the pumps, which is a 5-year warranty, doesn't start until we do an official startup. So That is planned for the spring, because we didn't have water this fall to do it, and we were in the middle of this mediation. So that will be completed. The company that supplied the pumps, Quality Flow, will be out for that startup. I believe Sweeney Controls, that did the electrical controls, will also be out at that startup. And then as directed, county staff and us as however directed. So just wanted to make that clear that warranty for the pumps isn't going to start until we do that, and that was in the contract, and I believe that's what they have agreed to. The other work per the contract has a 2-year warranty. That would start today if you approve the project and accept it, or whenever you accept it. So I think I'll stop there, but we do, based on the settlement agreement, we do recommend acceptance of the project, and I'm here for questions, which I assume we'll have some of it. So, thank you.
I'd like now to open the public hearing portion of the meeting, inviting anyone to comment on the sole issue that is before the Drainage Authority, the closing of the contract with Lametti and Sons, if folks wish. There will be a 3-minute limit. I'll direct you to Sarah, our note keeper here. She'll put up a 1-minute sign, and she will also put up a sign that says your time is expired. Are there any folks who would like to come before the Drainage Authority? Please state your name and address to be recognized. Good morning.
Good morning. Tim Weibel, 45438 541st Avenue, Cortland. The one thing that never was mentioned, Commissioner Marlowe, you were out and witnessed the seepage past the 84-inch tile Labor Day of 2021. That has not been fixed at all. Whether it's the gate that is too short, 100% engineer's fault for not having that gate the right height. It is worthless for us to spend, I think it was $70,000 we had to spend on that. We're getting absolutely zero value from that. I was told that it was put in there so we could run the system dry, the pumps, and I feel that we've got seepage coming in from the other direction, from the lake side, plus seepage now from this direction. Nobody would accept this. Nobody. It is just, it's insane. If anybody were to have a construction project and have something like this and the other things that were mentioned already, you wouldn't accept it on a personal basis. You wouldn't. Personally, I'm responsible for over $200,000 on this system. And I would ask that you make sure that the engineer and Lametti there, they can't wash their hands of what they've done too. They did a half-assed job. When you show up in the middle of winter and you expect that you're going to do construction work, and then they skip the summer build season and they come back in the winter again, honestly, man, if you want junk, build something in the wintertime.
Thank you, Mr. Weibel. Anyone else wish to appear? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Never sat here yet. John Lipke, 44242 541st Avenue, Cortland. Tim is absolutely right. And sorry, Chuck, but whoever designed that we need that smallest screen for the pumps. I know they say you need it for the warranty on the pumps, well then it's the wrong pumps. So it wasn't the landowners who made those decisions. And another thing, there was I was here when Lametti's people were here and they were talking about how they are in financial problems. If we give them the money and they go bankrupt, how are we going to get anything back out of them? So, thank you.
Any other folks want to testify to the issue in front of us? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Lynn Fliggy, 41460 551st Avenue. Okay, a couple of things here I'm really concerned about. Originally, ISG figured a certain kind of pump, and Lameti found a cheaper one, theoretically. That's what I heard. And now it's gonna cost us more. That to me don't make sense. And as far as the circuit breakers, they couldn't find it. It took me 2 days and I found them, and it was, I don't know what the cost is. I got the figures here if you want it in my briefcase. But after I found them, then they found them. Well, come on. They were just making blankety blank excuses. I mean, they totally screwed this project up. And I can show you pictures of everything that's been going on, the stuff that has to be done. And I sent most of you an email of things that have to be done yet. Number one, I don't know, I'll read them and then you can answer me how much it's going to cost. Cleaning of the ditch from the 3-foot pipe to the 4-foot to the tree, which is at least 4 feet, that has to be taken out. And then from the tree to the corner, that's Lameti sediment that has to be taken out. Okay, everybody's asking me, why did we put that 3-foot pipe in that's supposed to be a 4-foot pipe? Well, 978 is the depth of the original culvert that was installed back in the 1800s. Everybody started playing with planks and dams, and that's why we have to pump our water in there. Cost number 4, raising of the 3-foot pipe that's supposed to be a 4-foot pipe from 977 to 978, the way it is now. After 1 or 2 years, the sediment is going to be over the flap of the pipe, and the damn thing won't work.
1 minute, Lynn.
Okay, and besides that, the shut-off valve, that's leaking back into the station. Shut-off gate, Tim did that. Oh, we got to remove the rocks and install something other than the rocks to clean the grates off. We got to cement that or something. To the pump works, electrical station insulated and built to last. Cementing of the rocks, because the rocks are going to wash away again when we start up the new pumps. We need to know those costs before we accept anything today. And I'm just going to make a comment here to my friend Chuck. Does the ISG accept any responsibility for this? Chuck is my friend, and I'm just asking as a friend.
Thank you, Mr. Fliggy. Are you prepared to answer that now, or would you want to wait until later?
I can answer some of the questions that have been brought up, if you'd like now, or I can wait.
Mr. Chair, if I might suggest, can we go through all, we've got,
Yep.
Lynn mentioned, we have his email. We go through the rest of the public, and rather than jump back and forth.
You've got notes on what
Yep, I'm
the
taking
questions
notes.
are,
Yep.
and I appreciate that, Terry. I was heading in that direction. Any other folks who would like to testify? At this time, we have a 3-minute limit. Please give us your name and address for the record.
I know I spoke already, but I just got a question. So this additional 200 and some thousand, then that takes us up to the contract amount? So let's just say Lameti was supposed to get $2 million. So if we add this 200 and some $1,000 on, that takes us up to that flat $2 million that they were guaranteed at the original start, if I can get clarification.
Commissioner Morrow.
If I might, Mr. Chair, and Tim, I think what we'll do is we'll talk through that at the end. We'll go through it with Mr. Justin again, what that figure represents.
Thank you for the question. Any other folks wish to appear before the Drainage Authority on this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Tim Gieske, 40322 541st Avenue, Brighton Township 6. I just want to thank Tim Weibel for his due diligence, Lynn and John Lipke. I haven't been able to pursue this as well, but I want to state my agreement to what they have found. They have done concerted work on it. I've been involved with this pretty much the beginning, off and on. I am not surprised we're sitting here today with these problems. These were foreseen as this process unfolded. It was even in November of 2018 when the last pumps were added and we were denied a 30-day hearing for that increased cost. This puts us in our spot today. And it's very disappointing to see how this process went through. And I just appreciate the work that everyone's doing to make sure we shine light on this. And the landowners are easy targets to put the money on. And that's what usually happens because we're liable. And like I say, it's extremely disappointing. And don't know what will outcome. I want to hear what Mr. Brandel says, but we have to find who's accountable for this. And landowners are always an easy spot to put the bill because we're responsible. So please consider everything said today, and we'll continue to be involved with this.
Thank you, Mr. Giesecke. Anyone else to appear before the Drainage Authority?
Could I make a comment again, Jack?
I'm sorry?
Could I come forward again?
I think you might have 30 seconds left.
Okay. I just thought I'd say, with having two very dry growing seasons behind us, if this work would have been done when it was supposed to be done, they would have come out smelling like a rose. And they would, and look at all the pumping costs they saved because there really wasn't a lot of pumping the last couple of years. So I just hope we do not give them the check. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to appear before the Drainage Authority on this issue? Anyone else wish to appear before the Drainage Authority on this issue? Mr. Fleege?
I just got one question. If we do not accept this, what will our financial responsibility be going forward to appeal versus how much is it going to cost us to fix their screw up?
Thank you. We're lining up the questions and they will be addressed. Anyone else to appear before the Drainage Authority on this issue? Hearing none and seeing none, let's move to Mr. Justin on the question that was directed to you before we get to Mr. Brandel. Could you repeat the question and give us the answer that you have prepared or are ready to prepare?
The question that I was focused on was the question of, okay, what does this do to the contract price? Does this just bring it to 100% paid? Important to understand in this contract, although it does have a number, a lot of those numbers are estimates. They vary on the quantities of things that have to be moved, and there are also provisions that if there are unexpected costs, that the contractor has the ability and the right to ask for additional funds if those are made. So it is not a fixed price contract for all time. That's the first thing. But yes, from what the expected contract price would be, $199,000 of that's what we owed them under the contract. And I can tell you, there are some savings under that because the quantities were less. So the estimate would have actually been higher. But we did agree that they are entitled to $30,000 for the $30,070. It's basically $30,000 for the additional work. So that does increase from anything that had been envisioned or estimated at the start of the project. So that's the first question. Yes, it increases the project, but it increases it by $30,000, not $450,000 like they wanted to. Secondly, there have been some questions about things that you're not happy about on the project. my job and the board's job in going into this mediation was to look at the contract with Lametti. They did not design the project. They're given the plans and said, build it. Build it to this. And when we looked at the things and took deductions or saying you aren't deserved to be paid for that, that's what we look at too. Did you build this part as it was designed, or didn't you? And some of the things that we're saying, okay, that you're bringing up, we look at the designs and we say, when you're talking about that gate, the 84-inch gate, it's like they built it as designed. So it's not our place to say you did what we told you to do, but we're not going to pay you for that. If they did what they were contracted to do, they deserve to be paid. And if we don't pay them, and that's the part that I'll go into the next question, is what happens if we don't make this payment? If we don't pay them, the law provides that they can make a claim against the drainage authority, and if there's monies owed to them and they haven't been paid, they're entitled to get that money with 18% annual interest rate plus the attorney's fees that they incur in getting that amount. The board has approved that $230 is a fair amount. So if that payment has not been made, there is a very high likelihood that not only will the county end up paying and actually the ditch system, the $230, but 18% annual interest on top of that, plus their attorney's fees on top of that. Was there any other questions that I missed?
Mr. Chair, if I just could clarify, Mr. Justin, and that would also include the attorney's fees that we'd be paying presumably to you.
Correct. That's so you'd be paying both sides' attorney's fees essentially.
Okay, if you pay them now, and this work.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. Are you willing to take a question?
Yeah, I mean,
we had public input, but if you'd like to ask a question, come forward now. State your name and address, direct your comment to the board, and the board will direct it to Mr. Justin.
If you pay them what.
Your name and address, please, sir.
Gary Kiziki, 39, 626, 541st Avenue.
Thank you.
If you pay them now, what guarantee do we have that this work is going to get done that's not done yet?
All right, Mr. Justin, would you care to answer?
I believe their bond remains in place throughout the warranty period. So even if they're out of business, the bond is there and someone else would be hired to do it, but we'd be paid.
Mr. Chair, if I might, if I could, I think there might be two questions embedded in there. One is if something fails, there's the bond, but what about things that remain undone?
Right.
And I'm just going to take one example. I think there's I keep calling it the temporary berm or temporary dike that was there that's still there. Who pays to remove that at this point?
That is going to be a payment, those three items that I had talked about very briefly. Removal of the dike, any repairs that want to be done on that prefab electrical building, and third one was...
36-inch pipe that's out.
Oh, yes,
Sorry,
raising the
just got out of
36-inch
front.
pipe. Those are going to have to be borne by the system. They were used as negotiating chips during those negotiations to say you're not entitled to the 454 because of a number of things, but that's one of them. That reduced the number because the system was going to pay to get those done.
Thank you for your question. So I think, Mr. Justin, if you've completed your remarks, Mr. Brandel, there have been a number of questions that have come to you. I've asked Sarah if she has those, but I know that you were jotting things down. So could we have you repeat the question and then give the answer that you would like to give?
Sure, I'll try to hit them as best as I can here. So one of them, we just addressed the temporary dike or the material downstream. I do agree that they did leave material there, but that was part, like Mr. Justin said, that was part of the negotiations. The plans did call for that material to be taken out to a certain level, and it is not. It has not been. So I agree that still needs to be done. Also agree that the pipe did, that the 36-inch pipe did settle, and we would recommend that be put back to the right elevation. Again, that was something that was agreed upon as part of the settlement. Same with the defects in the prefab building. I do also agree that the slide gate on the 84-inch culvert is not working properly, and that does need to be addressed. It is in the acceptance letter that does need to be addressed. Let's see what, I just want to make sure I get the rest of them. There was, I think, a comment on the pumps, the KSB pumps. I've got that written down, that why did we get a less expensive pump, and but it was allowed in the bid to bid alternate pump designs. And there were, the pump still has the same function and capacity as what was approved. It did need different components, and that was a little bit of a pushback from the contractor, but the way the contract was written, they had to bid it to include all those components. So it will still function and work as was planned. It's just a different brand, as it runs a little bit different. And then the warranty on that still stays in place. As to the question of probably the toughest question of will ISG be liable repaying for that, I think that is something that we have not determined yet between us and the Drainage Authority. So I just probably have to leave that at that, based on the advice I've been given. So.
It seems like there were some pointed questions at the performance of ISG by members who are here today. And I wonder how you answer those questions.
Well, we did not control, we set a time frame that this project should have been completed at the end of May in 2021. The contractor did not meet that. There were supply issues. We very early in the process said that there are, we call them punch list items, items that need to be addressed. And we've fought on, as a member of the Drainage Authority, that those needed to be addressed, and we're part of that fight with the contractor and the county. So nobody wins when a project goes this far over. We have way more time than we estimated into it. I think that's all I'm going to say. But we,
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Morrow?
Mr. Justin, will you cut me off if I'm about to ask a question that I'm not allowed to ask or is not part of this? Well,
I might not cut you off in time, but I'll just say I can't answer.
no, I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to actually ask Mr. Brandel. But what we heard were a number of questions during the public hearing. And, Mr. Chair, I don't recall whether we actually formally ended the public hearing or not.
Well, it seems like it's going on.
All right, well, I'll proceed then. During this process, we've had individuals ask questions, and I can understand how frustrating it is when you don't get an immediate response to the question. So I'm just going to go through the list of questions I wrote down, and if other members heard something different, and sometimes, Mr. Brandel, I'm not sure whether you're talking about the same thing they're talking about. So it's my lack of clarity. I'm just going to start from the beginning. The seepage at the gate. Are you familiar with what Mr. Weibel is talking about there being seepage at the gate?
which, there's two gates. There's a gate on the 84-inch pipe, and I'm aware that that
And
is
that's
not,
empty.
that is not working.
Okay, so that's the one Mr. Weibel just gave a
Yep.
thumbs up to say that's
Yep.
the one he's talking about. Is that an installation problem, a design problem?
In my opinion, the gate was installed too low. It was installed too low. Found a note in the, it wasn't installed exactly per the plans. And when you close it, then there's an opening on the top.
May I ask a follow-up question to that?
Commissioners?
So if it wasn't installed properly, is there anybody on site, inspectors on site, who are overseeing this during installation?
There was a construction administrator there, and we did identify that there was an issue
And they
from the
didn't-
start.
And they didn't stop it and fix it? Or they allowed it to be installed incorrectly?
I can't tell you if we were there exactly when that was being installed, but we did identify that it wasn't installed right. So,
And one more, just so I'm clear, because I'm not sure if I understand the seepage the correct way, because in a previous meeting I had where some of this was explained to me, is there a pipe that's leaking around the pipe? I mean, in terms of like a pipe that's not compacted correctly, that there's seepage going by the pipe on the outside that would cause this to potentially erode and fail? And if so, that would be considered a warranty item?
absolutely. It was called out in the plans that we call it a clay plug, essentially to stop seepage around the pipe. And they did bring in some clay around the pipe. That 84-inch pipe, during the project, our construction administrator found that they laid it at the wrong grade, and we had them relay it. So that would be a warranty issue if there's seepage around that pipe, because it was spec'd to have clay material. We saw clay material go in. The reason that if that's happening, I don't know that that's happening. It's the first time somebody's told me it's around the pipe. But again, last year was pretty dry, so we didn't see any seepage on that. That would be a warranty item, and you'd have to dig it up and recompact the material, bring it back in. It'd be a compaction issue on the clay.
And that would be, just so I'm clear, that would be covered under our warranty, and that would, the settlement to Lametti today would not eliminate their responsibility to have to take care of that warranty issue. Correct?
I thought I heard Mr. Brando say the 2-year warranty would start today, theoretically.
Yeah, correct. But what I'm saying is, the issue before us is to settle with Lametti today. So if we settle with Lametti today at the agreed to amount, and that relieves them from doing any of this extra work that we're talking about, or the problems, that does not relieve them from having to perform a repair on that seepage around that pipe, because that would be considered a warranty repair.
Mr.
Am
Chair,
I-
if I mind, and Mr. Justin can certainly correct me. I'm going to maybe just reframe that a little bit. If this is covered by warranty, the party that's provided the warranty coverage is responsible for paying for the warranty work. Whether Lametti and Sons does the work, I don't think that's, so when you said they've got to do it,
Or
it's not necessarily
somebody has
Lametti.
to. But who provides the warranty?
I don't know who provided the warranty on that.
There's a bond for the project.
A bond for the warranty.
Yes, correct.
So an insurance company provides the warranty for any failed thing, so you wouldn't necessarily hire Lametti to fix a problem that you'd hire somebody. Holtmeyer could come in and
Yeah.
fix the pipe and be paid for, it would be paid for with the bond for the warranty for that repair.
The process would
Go
be
ahead,
on the
yeah.
warranty work, you first request,
Yep.
demand, that Lametti perform that work, and if they decline because they're out of business or for any other reason, then the bond would pay for someone else to do the exact work.
Commissioner Drantle?
If, and that would be subject to if the bonding company or whoever deems it to be warranty work.
Sure, it has to be covered.
That's like Ford saying, no, it's not your front wheel bearings, it's you driving your car improperly. It would have to be deemed true warranty work for that to happen.
Yeah, and that applies no matter whether it's the bonding company, whether it's Lametti themselves, or anything else in the world.
So more than likely, there's going to be an argument there. Potentially
It's
be an
not,
argument there.
it's not inconceivable.
Right, okay.
Commissioner Morrow, had you finished your line of
Oh,
questions?
gosh. And I want to be clear, I'm asking these questions so I can determine whether it would be Lametti or someone else who would be responsible for addressing an issue. So we talked about the seepage at the gate, and there's a dispute as to who is responsible for that. I'm not going to, Mr. Webb, I'm not going to address the seepage from the lake side at the moment. That may come up later. We heard questions about the screen and cleaning the screen. I believe this was former Commissioner Lipke who raised it at this point. And I understood it to be about the screen, about the cleaning of the screen. Is that?
And Nate would be the one to explain it better.
Do you, Mr. Brandon, do you understand the
Yes,
screen question?
absolutely.
Could you address that?
Yes, so there's a screen before the water goes into the pumps. That screen size was specified based on the pump design. And there was discussions during the process, and I believe there was even an alternative bid to put something to clean the screen. That was not accepted. So the screen will have to be maintained, and that is standard for a pumping system like this.
Is there a credible reason for the Drainage Authority to contend that Lametti is responsible for anything regarding the screen? Or did they install what they were told to install?
No, I would say no. They didn't install it correctly. There was an additional piece that had to be put on, and they argued that it wasn't their cost, but they eventually did that.
So that's been done.
That has been done, and that was they constructed the concrete piece to not match their shop drawing. Thus, their screen didn't match because they ordered their their screen based on the shop drawing. So there's an extra piece that had to be added.
And Mr. Chair, members, please cut me off if I'm going. Is it about the screen,
Yes.
Commissioner Lipke? I think, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that Mr. Lipke, again, anyone who's going to speak would come up if they're going to speak.
Please come forward.
So, talking with Nate and the other people that have been more involved in this, like Lynn, there's something wrong when they have to have the screen so tight that a corn stalk will plug it up. So they say, well, they have to have it that tight for that certain pump. Well, maybe they should have got a pump that could pump trash a little bit, and then they could have a little bigger screen and it would have been a lot less maintenance. And the safety area around that screen isn't just too swift either. Terrible. So, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Lipke, I do greatly respect you and that opinion, but I don't think that's about Lametti. And I'm just trying to focus on, because the question before us today is the final report on Lametti and the settlement. So please don't understand me or anyone up here saying we reject what you're saying. We're rather saying, is that a Lametti thing or not a Lametti thing? Mr. Rainer, I think you've talked about this before, about putting in a cheaper pump. What was the process for putting in a different pump system? If you want to touch on one more time how that process worked, I leave that to you. I think you talked about that was an alternate that was acceptable.
Yes, it was acceptable, and there were certain submittals and requirements, and it met all of those requirements.
So in terms of Lametti's responsibility, I don't understand Lametti to be responsible. They were involved in a contract process that was permissible in terms of selecting a pump.
Correct, yes.
Okay. I've always understood the breakers and I keep calling them the breakers. If the breakers is the wrong word, that's a supply chain
correct
thing.
verb.
We had people
Yeah.
sitting here multiple times talking about pandemic, global supply chain issues. I'm gonna say custom or specific types of breakers needed for this pump system, or could one get them, I'm gonna say, off the shelf?
There was a specific type for the pump system and the electrical systems. So there was a specific type for this. This is a unique system. There aren't a lot of these style of pumps around. So it was unique. That being said, we asked them to look for alternatives.
Them being Lametti.
Lametti, sorry. Yes, we asked Lametti to look for alternatives and try to speed this along. So
Okay. I'm not, there may be a factual dispute as to whether there were literally the right breakers on the shelf. I don't think Mr. Ryan is in a position to answer that question. It may be a question of whether Lametti exercised due diligence. I'm gonna keep going on this because I think if we go down to breaker question, our only question here today is Lametti responsible? And there's at least a credible question as to whether Lametti found or did not find something that may or may not have been available.
I have a specific breaker comment.
State your name and address again, please. Apparently, we're still in the public hearing here, but it's kind of a joint board public hearing, so.
Tim Gieske, 40322 541st Avenue. And I appreciate it because this is a complex issue with lots of input. In November of 2020, I believe, is when the specs were given to Lametti. And this is according to a hearing we were at previously. And in March of 2021, I believe, is when they were ordered. And they were supposed to be put in May of 2021. So the issue of liability due diligence, I believe, was failed on Lametti's part. And they, I believe in the hearing, blamed it on COVID supply issues, but they forego several months of ordering to get them on time. So if you want to look for liability, I think that's a key part of doing due diligence, is getting the pieces up front. And we knew there was supply issues at the time due to the pandemic. Thank you.
If there are any other comments from the public at this time, we would invite you to come forward. If not, we will close the hearing. Mr. Weibel, please come forward.
Tim Weibel again, 45438 541st Avenue, Cortland. And in regards to the 84-inch tile, ISG's project manager was there. I was there the day that they were working on that 84-inch tile and said it was installed 3 inches too low. This gate thing, I would strongly disagree with Mr. Brandel how this gate thing from the day it was put in. So we got a gap on the top. All of you, I assume, have seen pictures. But not only is the gap on the top, but when you roll it up, then it closes up this much of the top of the 84-inch tile. So why didn't we put in a 120-inch culvert if you were going to close off the top too on the installation of the gate? To me, I, as a landowner, I hired ISG to represent us to make sure that this construction was done properly, and I don't feel that I was represented by the company that we hired. And I've got a ton of questions, but I don't want to take your time. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions before we close the public hearing and continue on with the questioning from the board? Mr. Fliggy?
Okay, as far as the ditch cleaning, I feel that it is totally Lametti's problem because I got charts that Chuck drew out. It's supposed to be cleaned to 976, and the dirt is at least 4, if not 5 feet deeper or higher than what 976 is. And Chuck has a line drawn where the green or orange things were, and they put a dike beyond that, so there's no question that it's Lametti's problem.
Thank you, Mr. Fliggy. And again, folks, we want to be really open about this, and I hope that your testimony here today is something that you know that we're hearing. If there are any other public comments, please come forward now. Otherwise, we need to close the public hearing and move on to the board discussion. Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll turn to Commissioner Morrow, who was on a line of questions that hopefully will bring some clarity. Thank you.
And again, I would say cut me off or interrupt if there's anything, if you wish. I think I've hit most of the questions that were brought up in person here today, Mr. Chair. I know there were questions about why didn't they start in the summer. I know there are disagreements about supply chain or whether even supply chain issues occurred. Mr. Fleeke mentioned an email that he had sent, and I believe, Mr. Brando, you were on that email. But I just want to finish this up. I just go through a couple other questions I had. And I'm trying to figure out, is this a Lametti problem or not? Mr. Fleeke mentions a 3-foot pipe that was supposed to be a 4-foot pipe. Are you familiar with what Mr. Fleeke's talking about?
Yes, I am. So this was addressed, I think, in front of the board. At least we did address it to Mr. Fleeke. There was a 48-inch metal pipe which had corrugations in it. It had a capacity, and like Mr. Fleeke said, it was set to 978. That was requested to still have that overflow at one of the hearings. I can't remember which hearing, but at one of the hearings. So we added that back in, and we matched that capacity with a smooth wall 36-inch pipe. And we've shown the calculations that it has the same capacity.
So
now that pipe has settled, and I agree that it is not at the end is not at the right elevation.
Would it be your recommendation it should be at the right elevation?
Yes.
I believe Mr. Weibel talked about this already, about the shut-off gate before the pump station. I'm just reading Mr. Fleege's email, but I think that's the 84-inch problem, okay? There's discussion about removing rocks and installing cement on the east side of the drain. Great, excuse me. I know that we've talked about on the outflow side, and I believe the riprap has been increased.
That would be the east side.
That would be the east side.
Yes,
And so
that has been addressed.
And so in terms of Lametti,
That work has been addressed. It's not a Lametti issue at this point.
well, I'm just gonna, I think the last question is just about the building in general, the prefab building. I'm just gonna ask, is this a Lametti issue? I'm gonna try to keep it short here.
Yes, it is a Lametti issue.
And what do you say how?
Well, it wasn't installed very well, and then there was a fix that came in to try to fix that. And again, I don't have all the details of the settlement agreement, but I believe that was part of that, and I think I defer that to Mr. Justin. So
I believe there were 3 items that were mentioned: the 36-inch pipe, the prefab building, and the material downstream.
Correct. We addressed those and got concessions based on those.
Mr. Chair, members, I'm done.
Thank you. As folks will probably observe, Mr. Morrow was part of our mediation with Roger a few weeks ago, and so his depth of knowledge is great in this area. Do you have anything else to add to the conversation?
None unless the board would have further questions.
Board have any questions to ask our attorneys?
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, again,
Go ahead.
it's your recommendation that we, the board, accept the mediated settlement with Lametti.
Yes.
It's also the recommendation of ISG, the engineering firm, to accept the mediated
yes,
settlement with Lametti.
yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have completed the public comment section of this public hearing. Board has had discussion. If the board is comfortable in moving ahead with the final acceptance, the chair will invite Ms. Copa to the podium to present the findings. Please come forward.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
There's just some modifications that need to be made based to the findings based upon the hearing today. We would just ask to take a brief recess in order to modify those findings to reflect that, and then we would rejoin after the board has had a chance to look at those proposed findings.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think that's what Jackie was going to tell us, so testify to that effect, Jackie, if you'd like.
That is correct. So if we would take a short recess, we could prepare these findings as a result of what was happening during this hearing today, and we will print and present those for you to review.
Very good. We are in recess to prepare those findings, and we'll come back when Ms. Copa is ready. Following the public hearing and discussion on the Lametti and Sons contract with Nicollet County, county officials led by Jackie Kopit have come to a finding and order to accept the project. Would you please relay that information to us, Ms. Kopit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have presented each one of you findings in order for the acceptance of the Lametti contract. You have reviewed it and the order portion of it. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer any of those. Otherwise, I would look for either a motion to approve or deny the findings in order.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to that effect from this drainage authority? I'm guessing some of us are still reading the rest of the document.
Mr. Chair, I think that's true. So if we could wait a moment.
Certainly. Ms. Kopit, maybe you'd like to go to the third page and just recite that out loud. Would that be something that would bring some more clarity as the board members are still studying?
So the order portion of the findings in order I will read into record. Based on the foregoing findings and the entire record of the proceedings before the board acting as the drainage authority for Nicollet County Ditch number 86A hereby orders as follows. The Lametti and Sons Incorporated contract herein is accepted and complete. B. Final payment and any retainage under the contract shall be released to the contractor upon proof of release of all liens and contractor or material men related to the project. C. The Property and Public Services Director of Nicollet County is ordered to pay the balance due on the contract, if any, and costs of the improvement as provided by Minnesota Statute Chapter 103E. As resolved in mediation and approved by the Drainage Authority on December 30th, 2022.
Madam County Attorney, do you have anything to add to this document?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, in order to enable us to discuss this document, I move it.
We have a motion from Commissioner Morrow. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Drantle. Discussion. Members? Commissioner Zins?
Mr. Chair, just so I understand, it's been the recommendation of our council to, settle with this mediation for this amount, and myself, I'm finding, or I guess my understanding is if we do not settle for this amount, that doesn't mean that we won't have to eventually settle for this amount or a greater amount someday, because the next step would be litigation of this contract where Lemeti would put us in court with them. Is that correct?
That's correct, Commissioner
That is correct.
Zins.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Justin, I think you had laid out, there was reference to the contract amount, 18% interest. There were a number of factors you encouraged us to consider.
That's correct, I mean, Commissioner Morrow, the board has already approved the 230 that we're going to settle. So if we don't pay what we've already agreed to pay, we're going to be liable to those claims for the additional interest, attorney's fees, and things like that.
So what this order instructs our Jackie Cook to pay that amount. That's what we're acting on today. Any other discussion by board members of the Drainage Authority to the question in front of us, to the motion that's in front of us?
Well, Mr. Chair, and if I may, in addition to Commissioner Zinn's comments, and noting that nobody ever likes a settlement or a mediation process, I would note on page 1 that the claims originally were $654,000 from Lemeti and Sons, and just about $200,000 of that in number 7. That was for the unpaid work. They also claimed $454,331 in other items, which this settlement brings from $454,000 to $30,000. In addition, we don't pay Mr. Justin more money to fight this litigation. That's just, I'll leave it at that.
I take it that's one of the reasons that you seem to support this motion.
It's recognizing that this, I think, I heard Mr. Weibel had a description of this project that I share. But I think it's the best thing that the Drainage Authority can do for the landowners is to close out this part of the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Any other comments from board members? Any other comments from board members? Hearing none, please call the roll to the order that we're voting on.
Commissioner Morrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Drano?
Yes.
Commissioner Zins?
Yes.
Commissioner Dean?
Yes.
Commissioner Kolars?
Yes, it carries 5-0. If there's no other business, our public hearing is closed today. Thank you, Mr. Justin. Thanks, members, and thank you to landowners for being here.